Minigames. They suck. You know that. I know that. We all know that. So, after I spent 50 hours in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trying to complete all of the minigames, I realized I wasn't actually sure if the time I was investing into this was actually worth the payoff of completing Johnny's Hotel. So today I want to go through all of the minigames that gave me particular trouble and kind of waned on my sanity for a little bit. So yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, I need to be honest. The piano's actually one of my favorite minigames in all of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The feeling of playing something like Tifa's theme near flawlessly is one of the admittedly most satisfying things you can do in the game. It's fun, it's dynamic, and the longer you go without making a mistake, the more symphonic the music gets. It makes you feel like you have a front seat to a distant world symphony. It's great. Until you miss a note. Then the metronome kicks back in. Now you start second guessing yourself. Then it turns into a domino effect of you just desperately trying to regain some level of control over the song. But you can't. It's a sinking ship and you're just along for the ride, trying to find beauty in the chaos of these piano keys. But there's nothing there. Just the tick, tick, tick of the metronome until you either fail or you start over. Maybe it's a bit melodramatic, but to be fair, it's not dissimilar from feeling the stress of losing your place when you're actually feeling an instrument. But that doesn't make the frantic pace of the more difficult songs any less anxiety-inducing when all you want to do is get a good enough score to hit A rank so it actually kind of sounds like the song you're trying to play, and so that you can impress our King Dorian. But if we're honest, even Aerith's theme isn't so bad if you're familiar with the song. Really, none of the songs are that tough, with the key exception being 2 legs, nothing to it. This song, in and of itself, turned possibly one of my favorite minigames in all of Rebirth, and one of my favorite minigames in general, into a source of nothing but pain. The song would start, and it's like my thumbs would forget how to be thumbs. Left was right, up was down, and it took me so long to memorize how I needed to tilt these damn joysticks to do well with the song more consistently, that more often than not, the only thing getting tilted was me. And worst of all, I love the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth soundtrack so much. I think it could be one of my favorite soundtracks, just in general. But this song, I just don't like at all. So not only was I having to listen to this song of all songs over and over and over again as I continuously failed, but I didn't even like the song, and that compounded the pain so much more. While I did eventually get an A rank, it took me several hours that I will never get back, and the song still haunts my dreams at night several weeks later. I don't dislike the crunch off minigame on paper. I actually thought it was kind of fun the first couple ranks.
Then, everything changed when the
Jules
nation attacked.
If you've played it, you probably don't need me to explain why. It's frustrating because I want to be angry with it for being unfair, or too luck-based, or poorly designed, or even just for being completely unfun. But unfortunately, it's none of those things. The challenge is painfully fair, which makes it so much worse, because now being unable to do it is purely a skill issue. When doing this minigame, you really need to get into the groove with using the shoulder buttons on the DualSense controller while making sure you're paying very close attention so that you know when you need to mash the trigger when there's a yellow circle versus when you need to slightly press down on the button when there's a green one. So before you get used to it, it's pretty tricky, don't get me wrong, especially since it makes use of the stupid trigger resistance that the PS5 controllers have. And at first, it ultimately didn't feel any worse than the squat challenge or the pull-up mini games in the past installments of 7. That is, until you need to go up against Jules. When most people see this little building, I'm sure that they see a gym. It's not what I see though. Let me paint a picture for you. Every single time I even attempt to go up against Jules, I'll be doing great. I'll be on pace to beat him. I'll be on an adrenaline high. But as the clock is ticking down, always have one lapse where I second guess myself. Typically, it's when a green circle pops up and I click just a little bit too hard because I'm so focused on going fast, and then Now, I'm gonna level with you all here. I never actually beat this minigame myself. I do have the trophy in Johnny's Hotel, and that's because my wife, she did it for me because she's much better at those things than me. And you know what? I don't consider that a failure on my part. I think of it as smart strategy. I love Final Fantasy XII. It's one of those games that felt so different from the rest of the franchise, but in a really good way. And something that I liked about it was getting to play around with the Gambit system. Being able to play around with your party so that you don't need to stress about what your party members' NPCs are doing was a really cool and interesting way for the franchise to approach much more dynamic party-based combat without relying on the traditional turn-based structure. How incredible is it to be able to prioritize what your party members can do in any context, so that even without any inputs, you know they'll be doing what you need them to do whenever you need them to do it, because you told them to use a potion when their health goes below 50%, or so that they'll use lightning on any airborne enemies. So when I saw that Gears and Gambits was a minigame, I was pretty excited. Flex my Final Fantasy XII muscles again, because ultimately it's very similar in structure and principle to the Gambits from 12, and the proto-relic quests were pretty fun and satisfying, and I breezed straight through them. But as always, then we hit hard mode. Now, it's very possible that my impatience with trying to complete all of the objectives at Johnny's Hotel is what got the better of me here, and I can respect that. But the sheer amount of options that this stupid minigame throws at you is insane. Like, there's so much you need to take into consideration when creating these gambits. Should you prioritize having your robots debuff the enemy units? No. Should you give them the ability to heal or buff themselves or their allies? No. Or should you just have them be as offensive as humanly possible? Yes. Or some variation of all of these. The frustrating bit for me was that there were just so many options that were added out of nowhere. My brain was still reeling from playing 2 Feet Nothing to It like 50 times. And so I would try to make gambits that looked alright. You can't just luck your way through this minigame after all. Either your gambits have a sound strategy, or I had to carve out an afternoon just so that I could sit down and really study the options within the Gambit system, so that I could actually have some semblance of an understanding of how it operated in this game, so that I could stand a fighting chance. And while normally that wouldn't be too bad if this had any application within the game outside of this minigame, but it doesn't. I had to essentially learn an entirely new game, as anyone who is watching this who completed this minigame also did. And while I love how in-depth and nuanced it was, I love the ambition. Don't hide a trophy behind it. I get it, but it's just, and then even once you have fully nuanced understanding of this battle system, in the last fight, the boss literally starts healing himself. Ultimately, I can totally see how people could adore this game and really sink their teeth into min-maxing it, because it's astonishingly well crafted and well thought out. But few things will boil my blood more than finally figuring out a way to beat the boss, and you have time run out just before you can kill him. Cactuar Crush can literally go to hell. This is the one minigame in Rebirth that I struggle to find any redeeming qualities in. I just hate it. I'm not one to say negative things without trying to put a positive spin on it, but literally Cactuar Crush. While the proto-relic quest to find the Cactuar statues was fun and cute, this stupid minigame can suck a big fat tonberry. I get the point of the minigame is to be a glorified skill check for you as you're playing as Yuffie and Aerith. But guess what? I'm not skilled. I just want the trophy for Johnny's Hotel, and these stupid hyperactive amphetamine-laced succulents need to die. As Yuffie, the minigame isn't the most fun in the world, but at least it's manageable because she's so quick to be able to move around the area, and she can switch easily between magic and physical attacks, and all you really need to do is abuse Windstorm, Doppelganger, and Blindside, and you're fine. Completing it with Aerith, though, I'm just gonna say that Sephiroth, he might have been onto something. As Aerith, not only is it tedious, but it also highlights just how bad I am at playing her. And is that a me issue? Yes, it is, and I'll own that, which makes me even more frustrated because I would slowly but surely get better with each round, but when you're shooting for 6,000 and you can barely break 4,000 time and time again, it's a bit discouraging, you know? So I would stop doing Cactuar Crush and do another mini game. So I would cool off because surely I'd get it once I had some time away from it. Let that muscle memory set in, right? Wrong. While I did beat it eventually, even just trying again made me have to summon every ounce of my willpower. I haven't ranked any of the other minigames. I'll give this one a solid 0.1 out of 10. And if you think I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, you're probably right. I'm probably just amping this up because I need to get these feelings out in some way. And this is a pretty healthy outlet to do so, all things considered. Because even this minigame doesn't compare to the last one I need to talk about. And oh boy, howdy. The final fight against Sephiroth is not something I would subject my worst enemy to. Don't get me wrong, the fights against Shiva, Ifrit, and the middle manager all gave me some decent trouble, but ultimately, they only hung me up for like 20 minutes each. But Sephiroth's different. It took me nearly half an hour before I could even get more than 2 hits on him. My reaction time wasn't quick enough. I had trouble figuring out what kind of punches he was going to throw, and even when I started getting it down, I didn't process it quickly enough, so I would block instead of dodge, which just delayed the inevitable. And so my strategy of muscling my way through all of the fights and immediately restarting if I got hit more than once early on because I knew there was no way I was coming back from that deficit didn't work anymore. If I got hit at all before I got at least 1 hit off on him, I would immediately quit out because even though I had memorized all of his flurry rushes or whatever you want to call his big combos, I just needed to survive long enough to get to them. And once I would get to about 3 hits, I'd start getting legitimately anxious because I really didn't want to mess up right at the end because who knows when I would get that far again. This was my final boss. I would rather do literally anything in this game over fighting 3D Sephiroth again. And when the gold saucer inevitably returns for part 3, if they somehow come up with a more difficult version of this stupid minigame, I swear to God, to Bahamut, to whatever you want to pray to, I will, I'll probably do it. If I'm honest with you, I'll probably do it. But honestly, if anyone from Square Enix is watching, I love your game. It's a masterpiece, one of the best games I've probably ever played. But please don't include this minigame, or Cactuar Crush for that matter, in anything ever again. I can't keep doing this. I don't think I'm strong enough. This is one of the first games I've actually felt motivated to get the Platinum Trophy for, which I'm still working towards as I record this video, because I love it so much. But at the same time, no game has quite made me as angry as this one has. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I beat Sephiroth, I did it, but I'm begging you, leave it here. But that'll do it for this week's video, guys, and I want to pass the question off to you. Did any of these mini-games wane on your sanity like they did on mine? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, and especially if there were any that gave you particular trouble that maybe I didn't talk about here, because I'll be honest, they probably gave me trouble too. I just didn't want to talk about it. And as always, if you like this kind of content and you want to see more Square Enix or, JRPG content in general coming from this channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and why even ring that notification bell so you never miss another upload. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your week, and why not even a fantastic rest of your month. And I will see you in the next video. Later.